Good.
Okay.
Mhm. Welcome to the starting point. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. The name of the program is The Starting Point, and usually I begin asking my guests about their early memories, the starting point in life, in faith, in education.
Okay.
So share with us something about your family.
Yes, well, I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's South Florida area, beautiful beaches.
Yeah.
Really enjoy that area a lot. All of my relatives, for the most part, are from Florida. And that's where my parents actually became Adventists prior to me being born. During their young adult ages, they were canvassed at their homes and received Bible studies and were baptized probably in their mid-20s. And so as they got married and everything, I was just born into an Adventist family. We eventually moved to Atlanta at that
I see. So you grew up actually in Atlanta?
Yes,
or
for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah, I was in Florida for 4 years of my life.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have one younger brother.
Yes.
He is also in Atlanta, doing well. So, yes.
The two of you, yeah?
Yes, just the two of us.
I see. And so you have early memories of, reading the Bible or being the Bible read for you,
Oh, yes.
songs and...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good memories?
Yes, positive memories.
Yes.
Memories of Pathfinders especially. My parents really made sure I was outdoors and
So
in the community.
you're a kind of outdoor person?
Yes, all the time. Always outside as much as possible.
In Florida, it is possible most of the time.
Yes.
If you enter heat, you can be out.
I love heat. Love heat.
Yeah. What about schools? Did you like school?
I did. I love school. Our Adventist schools had lots of opportunities for extracurricular activities and ministry. So music was early introduced to me when I was 5 or 6.
Really?
Played the piano. Took piano lessons.
I heard you playing piano, and
Yes.
you're quite gifted. You express obviously you express your soul when playing the piano.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, the dynamics were very emphasized when we practiced. Yes.
Yeah, and did you have preferred classes?
I loved math. Math, especially, and
Why?
Bible as well. So
do you think why math was?
I think because it mixed with my interest in music and just there were so many connections in math that didn't seem connected, and it's just something I enjoyed to do. I did it even when I wasn't in school. During the summer, I would just do math.
Really?
Just because.
That was your hobby?
Yes, yes.
Very interesting. Is there a way to convey that passion for math to our viewers?
Right, I know. It can be interesting. You hear a lot of, I'm not good at math. You hear that a lot.
And in our times, math is more and more important.
Very, very true. Yes, it's everywhere.
When did you make a decision to follow Christ, for you to have him as your personal Lord and Savior?
It's interesting that you asked that. I made that decision when I was 17. So it was on what I guess conventionally later in my life, but I think my parents just allowed me to make that decision on my own. And the chaplain at my academy was very instrumental in mentoring me. He provided the studies leading up to baptism. And during our spiritual retreat, as an entire school, I was able to make that decision in front of my peers at Camp Alamisco. Yes.
So the chaplain had quite an influence on you. Were there other persons making a significant impact on you?
Mostly my Bible teacher. He was very instrumental in kind of encouraging me to stand for God no matter what was happening around me. So that was encouraging, as well as coaches, because I did play sports in school, and they were very instrumental in making sure that I just gave God my best in everything that I did. So that was important.
Usually here in America, children from Adventist families get baptized earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. For you, it took a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember why it was a process of, did you have a time when you had difficult questions and you needed time to clarify that? Like a doubt or...
I don't have a memory of ever having issues with the idea of getting baptized. I think it was more of when I was ready to do it. I've pretty much always been involved in Sabbath school at church, even in preteen years. I remember being up front, playing piano when necessary, being in part of youth Sabbath and things like that. But I think it was just me being ready, understanding it. Me personally, I want to understand and fully feel like it's the right time. And I felt like my whole life has been a late development, to be honest with you, and just kind of absorbing information a little more before going forward.
Yes. Listening to one of your presentation in one of the churches, I think, if I'm right, I think you made some reference to some difficult situations in your extended family.
Yes.
Would you like to
Sure.
open just briefly that?
Yes, briefly.
In what ways impacted you?
Yes, absolutely. I think my parents, they made a decision when I was early to move to Atlanta, mainly because of, the struggles that my relatives have gone through. Their parents have gone through quite a few struggles with just alcohol, drugs, and just a lifestyle that's just detrimental to us as human beings, and just wanting to give me a different picture of the options I could have.
It was something you were aware as a child?
Yes, definitely. Coming back to visit family and already being exposed to what my parents were giving me, it gave me an opportunity to see the contrast between my life, my brother's life, and my cousins. And there was always just a difference that we could see.
So rather than representing a kind of temptation for you, it was rather a deterrent.
Sure.
I'm not going to be like that.
Yes, because you just see the results, the pain, the suffering, the death, and all of that. I just didn't want that. Yeah,
and indeed, it was and it is a time when, younger generations struggle a lot with that.
sure.
And unfortunately, I think, maybe I'm wrong, you may correct me, but I think even more in African American communities.
Absolutely, you're definitely right with that. Finding the right mentors and parental figures. I'm thankful that my parents were very involved in my life, very influential in my work ethic and staying rooted in God. That's very rare sometimes. So it's a blessing, the way that things turned out.
And when the time came for you to choose a life path, an occupation, and a career for you, it was difficult for you to make a choice? Or?
Yes, because when you have many opportunities to develop spiritual gifts, you have more choices. Trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. I've always loved math and didn't always have a lot of ideas as to where to go with that interest. And so I did engineering for a few years as a civil engineer.
Where was that?
That was actually here in Atlanta, mostly Lawrenceville area, with a small private company where I worked with soil and materials and just providing information for engineers so they could best serve whatever project they were.
That was as a work, yeah?
Yeah, that was my
But,
work.
yeah, but studying?
Yes, studying
As well.
So I studied civil engineering,
Oh.
yes. And then also mathematics as well. And so eventually, after working in that occupation for about 4 years, I always had an interest in mentoring young people.
Yes.
And being there for them, community service and things like that. And so I started to naturally gravitate towards math and education, math in research, math in the medical field, that sort of thing. So I ended up being a math teacher for students with emotional and behavioral learning disabilities.
How do you remember? How did you become attracted to working with students with special needs?
Through math tutoring for the most part. So a lot of one-on-one opportunities where I could just visit homes and just tutor students who were just done with math. They had already tried.
That was your occupation, or it was something you were volunteering for?
Volunteering, and then sometimes on the side, just extra money during college years. But I did it just every so often, but it started to be more of an event where I would do it more just because I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed getting to know the student and figuring out what made them tick, why they didn't like math, and being able to talk to them about other things, not just the classes, but life as well.
And how did you find the homes to go? Was there any kind of structure? Or
Sure,
yeah.
yes. There are lots of, businesses that you can apply for. And once they screen you and make sure, you're a legitimate educator, that you are safe and things like that, they figure out where you live and then place you in areas for families or parents to reach out to you and ask for help.
So you had a number of families
Yes.
at a certain time visiting them. How often? Once a week, or
once to twice a week for the most part.
even twice a
Yes,
week?
yes.
For how long?
Usually an hour to 2 hours.
Oh.
And what would happen was that maybe I'd work with one sibling, and then the parent would be impressed with the progress.
Inviting you to work with the other children. Yeah.
And then they would refer me to some of their friends,
I
their
see.
families. So there was a very interesting network
So
happening.
you felt welcome and
Yes.
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 And tell us something about some personal encounters, not revealing names or anything, but just the dynamics, the experience. You said you observed, you wanted to see why they don't, understand math, what could help them to grasp it and to become proficient in math and things like that. Share with us some of those, because as you said, many young people say, I don't like math, I don't like.
Right.
And life cannot be.
Yeah.
I mean, modern education is nothing without math in our times. Yeah. So probably some of our viewers, families especially, maybe they will be, benefiting from you sharing your own experiences in situations like that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, most of my students, or just the tutees that I had, many times they were already very hard on themselves when it comes to not being good at math. So just for example, if there have been many times where I've been with a student and my initial visits with them are just letting them know that it is okay to be where they are in that moment, because there's a lot of comparisons that happen with, well, I'm not good at math and there's so many other students that are. What is wrong with me? Why can't I get it? And that triggers a lot of insecurity, low self-esteem, things like that.
Doubting themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Behaviors come out. And so someone who has poor behavior in a classroom, it may just be because they're upset at themselves for not being smart or not being good enough. So
and once you feel the class moves on and you linger behind, and the longer the time, the longer the distance.
Sure.
It's very difficult
Yes.
to catch up the train
Yes.
once the train began moving.
Right, and they're very conscious of that. So just letting them know that their value is still intact, whether you're good at math or bad. And that's just a principle that I feel like I got from just reading the Bible, how Jesus helped anyone. It wasn't
About math?
well, just anything, exactly. Anything. I mean, when a blind man came up to him, he wasn't like, well, how long have you been blind? Are you a better blind person than this person? There wasn't this measurement before he decided to heal someone. He just healed them because he valued them. And so I really wanted to instill that in students, because that's when the wall comes down and they start wanting to ask questions. They start feeling motivated to say, I don't understand that. Can you explain that again? Because that is very hard for teenagers these days. Yes.
When they realize they are behind, they try to hide that.
Yes, they
And
hide
at
it.
that time, any learning
Just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Yes, they say, I get it, I understand
but
it.
they don't.
I don't need help. I'm sick. I don't feel well. I mean, everything.
So they are lost.
Right, right.
So first of all, you encourage them and help them to realize that they are valuable persons,
Sure.
intelligent persons, and they can, I mean, they could catch on,
Yes.
but after all, that's not, I mean, the essence of life, yeah? Maybe some, have you ever met persons who, in spite of all their good intentions and all your, help and expertise, they couldn't? Are there any persons like that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it just maybe takes them longer. Like it's a longer process for them, where sometimes they can't get one class in a year. They might need 2 years to take it, so that can process for them to develop the understanding.
But they are still valuable persons, and they may have other gifts.
Right, that is very true. And then the other thing that I would do a lot of times is figure out what is it in their lifestyle to help them kind of be more alert during class. A lot of the students that I work with, maybe it was something they're eating or that would make them tired. And so telling them about, things I would eat to keep me awake, more fruits and veggies, more water, that sort of thing. And
So were they willing to?
Yes, because when they would see me just be able to do so much math in my head without putting pen to paper, they were interested as to how
you are good at that.
Yes. They're just like, how does that happen? How can you see that? Why do you have so much energy? Why are you able to do so many things? You look my age, that sort of thing. And so just naturally going into conversations about diet, sleep, exercise, sometimes prayer, prayer meeting, things like that. It would venture into those conversations naturally.
Well, after all, I suppose many of them were already Christians. Or,
Yes, Christians interested in Christianity, that sort of thing, yes.
So it was not offensive to them to...
No, they wanted to know more. They would ask for prayer before I even mentioned it,
Really?
with things going on in their lives. So it's interesting how God would open doors. But yes, the conversation of God was open for discussion.
So many people feel that math and God are, two different worlds.
Yes. As a matter of fact, many philosophers, have said that, God is...
Speak more about that.
Yes.
In our programs, I never had someone speaking about that. Go on.
Right. Well, I mean, math is very, you get the answer and that's it. It's very clean cut. And there's some, that believe that even God is too perfect to interact with human beings. We have so many flaws and struggles and
improbabilities.
You don't plug in the equation and get the answer that you want all the time with life. And so being able to dig deeper into math and see that math does accommodate for many, many different variations. Things that just don't make sense or don't seem to be connected end up being connected from other ways. And just seeing the flexibility in math really gave me an opportunity to, again, correlate that or see a parallel of how flexible God is as well, how he's able to just accommodate for wherever people are and meet their needs and grow them to where he would like them to be.
Do you mean flexibility in math? 2 plus 2 is 4.
Right.
Nothing else it can be.
I agree.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's something beyond that
Right.
elementary arithmetic. Yeah.
Right, because 2 has so many different representations. 2 can be represented as 4 in another system of numbers, or 39 in another system of numbers. 4 is kind of like a representation of a family of different numbers. And so seeing that flexibility, seeing how even other letters or other equations can still represent the number 4 or another number, you see so many ways in which things that just do not seem connected at all. And I keep saying that, but just they don't seem connected. There's no way in which they can connect, but they are. They're a part of one set. And that's beautiful. It reminds me of Corinthians 12 and 13, especially 12 that talks about the
Spiritual gifts.
the spiritual gifts, and how even though they may seem completely different, they're of one spirit.
Working in all of them, and
right, and they all come from that same group, so to speak.
Yeah, but Paul then speaks about love, and he says that this is a much more commendable or excellent
Right, exactly,
way.
Very true.
You mentioned, but you didn't develop this idea that some of the, ancient, a few centuries ago, theologians were also mathematicians. Share with us a little bit about them, in what ways for them math was a way of understanding God and his ways.
Sure. My favorite 2 are Johannes Kepler. He was a contemporary of Copernicus, in between Galileo, and so his idea of the universe was heliocentric, which were all of the planets surround the sun. And he really,
it was revolutionary at that time.
Yes, exactly. And so he really believed that, but did not have the data to back it up at the time. And so he spent a lot of time reading the Bible, learning more about music, learning more about geometry, and how just his understanding of how the Bible works, and just the things that were in those verses told him that the Son of righteousness, the Son, that sort of thing, to focus on that and not have this be a man-centric system where everything surrounds around us, but around God.
So you think his main source for understanding that the Son is the center of our system was the Bible?
There are many
I
times,
didn't know that, and nobody says anything about that.
Right. There are many times in his journals where he references just Bible verses in reference to God, and how the orbit could be in that system. And so I don't remember all the verses off the top of my head, but he really did read a lot through the Bible, and as he was gathering his thinking or gathering the way he should go about approaching something logically, he used the Bible quite a bit when trying to solve math problems.
That's quite unexpected.
Yes.
And unknown, unfortunately. Unknown, yeah. And you said that there were 2. One was Johannes Kepler, and the other one was
Blaise Pascal. Yes, he. I'm currently, for the past couple of years, been reading one of his minor works called Pensées, and it is basically an apologetic of his understanding of God, and not only just that, but the value of Christ being the center of our relationship with God. I mean, he says in several areas in the book that if we did not have Christ, all of the prophecies, everything would not make sense because you need Christ as the center. And he also ventured into the need to understand yourself, not just focusing on God, but if the fruit of understanding God more should be to understand who you are and where you really are, so that you see your need for him. And he talked about that a lot, that without God, we are void, we are completely destitute without God, without Christ. He made a very intentional effort at driving that point home in his writings.
I think you wrote something about that.
Yes.
Is something in that book?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is my personal minor works journal. You know, as an aspiring mathematician, I have my own book, and something kind of connected to how Pascal mentioned the idea of void and us being void without God. I have something here, if you don't mind me
Yes, please.
reading. Yes. Before light was spoken into existence, the Creator God saw that there was void. There was chaos, a formless existence without any light. Before creating guiding lights in the heavens, organized bodies of water, land and vegetation, animals of the land, sky and sea, a home for humanity, he understood and recognized void. We skip over this verse because the more obvious, more apologetically controversial information seems to be present in the later verses of chapter 1. But for God to understand void gives us an opportunity to let him understand us. Yeah.
So Pascal was also a very reflective
Very
thinker.
reflective, deep thinking. I mean, I admire that, especially for someone who is intelligent. It's easy to just focus on what you're studying and have a higher than normal view of yourself. But he was very reflective in how much he needed God and how without that, you're nothing. And I admire someone to be that way, to acknowledge that fact about themselves. And it encouraged me to do the same, to really think about the fact that there are voids that God needs to be a part of, that he needs to fill, he needs to create. And
so if I hear you well, on one hand, you are very passionate about math as an expression of God's wisdom and his love for beauty and elegance.
Yes.
And on the other side, that helps you enter your inner soul and reflect on that, and helps to understand you in the light of God's love and
Right.
acceptance.
right, that's very true.
How do you do that? Do you have a certain method? It's your way of thinking while doing dishes or driving, or you also have a set aside time, a certain place maybe where, or a journal. What's your method, if I could ask that?
Well, sure. Firstly, I guess my method of even coming to that conclusion is in math. There's a concept called the empty set. So that's in set theory, and it tells us that every group or every container of something has emptiness in it. And so that lets me know that there's something inside of me that needs to be filled every day. And that's what prompts me to reach out for God. And so from that, I'm able to look at the life of Christ and see the way in which heaven supported him from the moment he was born all the way until it is finished. And how the Father provided support through angels, through messengers, through many people that provided those human needs that we all have so that he could make it day by day. And seeing the fact that even Christ, the sinless one, said, "Of myself I can do nothing," gave me the courage to say that about myself, and also seek the Father for the same type of support that Christ received as well.
Hmm.
So it gave me a more intentional prayer. Like, Lord, you provided people that understood Christ's path. You provided messengers or angels when Christ went through the wilderness. Through the blood of Jesus Christ, I'm boldly coming to request those same things as well in the moments that I need them also, and expecting them to be done because Christ said that we have that access through him also.
And you have this experience?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. My second career of education, it took me having to take a lot of steps of faith to go back to school, and timing, finances, everything, people being able to allow me to still go to church during times where I had to do things for my education and supporting me wholeheartedly for it. People from church providing, help and support where necessary. Those prayers were answered, and I was able to successfully get through school much stronger than I ever intended, and be a blessing to way more people at the school that I'm at now because of being able to pray and see the way that God provided for Christ on this earth. It just gave me an awareness that I have that access.
We return to this period of expanding your studies, but returning to your own work with God or things like that, is mainly meditation, or is reading mediated meditation? If you are a reader, you are a reader of few books in depth or extensive reading? How it is for you? Many books,
right?
or a few very thorough?
Yeah, I tend to focus on maybe 2 or 3. One of them is always going to be the Bible.
Do you have some favorite places, some favorite sections of the Bible?
Yes, I love the book of Malachi. Malachi 3,
short.
yes.
Malachi
3 is
about bringing generations together.
Yes, and it's briefly after
that's
the
That's 4.
Yes.
I refer to chapter 4.
There's a section in there where it acknowledges the fact that those who fear the Lord are tempted to feel like following God is in vain.
Yes.
And the fact that those who come together and talk about God, there's a book of remembrance written. So all those conversations that you have about your struggles as a Christian, that you are being remembered. Those prayer requests, you're being taken care of, and that God remembers you. You're his jewel. Just very beautiful, beautiful words. And I hear a lot of people also discuss time as something that is just a prayer request for them. People need more time to grow, or more time to live, more time to get things done. And there's a verse in Joel that talks about all the time we've lost, maybe from years of mistakes or pain and suffering. God will restore the time that the locusts have eaten away. And those are verses that I love to pray for people when I'm talking with them, so that they know that even those things that are unspoken or that are so deep to our souls and our core that we're not able to verbalize, even God addresses those as well. I like to pray those verses for them and put their names in the verses so that it's more personal for them.
Interesting. So you use the verses of the Bible as the frame for your prayers, but you insert names and situations of your own or of others.
Right. Yeah, very much so.
Did you learn that from someone else, or it was something you designed for yourself?
Well, I would like to say that it was just personal experience, as well as Ian Bounds. I don't know if you've heard of books of his on prayer, and just interesting things concerning our prayers, not just lamenting to God about everything going wrong, but praising him for, what he has done, what he is doing, and what he plans to do, because that also helps us emotionally. If we're always focusing on the things that we don't have and not praying for what God is doing, it gives us an imbalance sometimes. And so that book was important, and just seeing the way people prayed in the Bible as well. Prophets who, when they prayed for people, they included themselves in the prayers, but they were very specific about what they were praying for. It wasn't just this general, Lord, I need help, but they would talk about what they were going through. David was very expressive in things that he struggled with and his emotions and spiritual battles, and I just took it upon myself to do the same.
So you are very specific, very, very open.
Yes, I try to be as specific as possible, as much as I can, and whatever I can't be specific about, the Holy Spirit knows.
Some people say, I don't need to tell God anything because he knows already anything about me. What do you think? What's the value of being specific with God? As long as he knows it already, we can't bring any new information to him.
Yes, and that's true that he knows. I love that God is so personal, because every blessing, especially prayer is a blessing, it's not just for him, it's a mutual thing. It's for us as well. We need to be able to confess that, because that's us giving access fully to surrendering what it is we're struggling with and being able to have a conversation about it. There might be something that I'm going through, but unless I want to have a dialogue about it and really talk about my feelings and what it is that I'm really struggling with and why I don't want to do X, Y, Z, we can't open up a conversation of, talking about why. Where's this lack of faith coming from? Where's this fear coming from? And really opening up that void, that dark spot in your heart for God to fully cleanse and get to the root of.
That's very interesting. We all sometimes, or many times, we know what it would be right.
Right.
And how somehow we can bring us together to just move in that direction.
Right.
But we don't pay attention to what happens. And maybe later we complain or we blame ourselves, but we don't stop and think, why?
Yeah.
You said we have to face that.
Absolutely.
That lack of will, or to face our own resistance and to understand why.
Right. I agree with that. I think that again comes from God. I mean, even in the creation week, you see God being reflective. He doesn't just create the stars and say, okay, next thing. He takes a moment to say, that was good, or that was very good. Or you see Christ spending time in prayer, not just working all the way through. He stops to process what's going on. Even when he dealt with the disciples, Peter was one that just wanted to go, right? But there were times where Christ had conversations with him. Do you love me? Like really asking him questions that Peter needed to address himself, to help him grow internally so that he could take his spiritual life to the next level. And so I think it's very, very, very important.
That was one of the reasons Jesus asked him that same question 3 times, probably. Yeah?
Right. To really ask him, do you really love me? And also deeper and correlate it to his 3 denials as well. I mean, there's so many ways to look at that, but yes, he asked him several times so he could really know for sure deep in his heart at every level if he really loved God or not.
Why do we resist, reflecting on us? Why do you have such a trend, or to move on, to change topics, to be distracted by something else?
Yeah.
Why?
I love that you use that word distracted. Pascal actually writes about just the way in which we distract ourselves a lot because of those feelings we feel. Going back to kids not being good at math, when we feel that guilt or that shame or the fact that we are less than in some area, we don't believe that we could be loved in that moment. We forget about the fact that God is still able to love us. He loved us while we were yet sinners. You know, his love reaches to the uttermost. And there's unbeliefs that happen in those moments when we visit what we've done wrong or what's been done wrong to us. And we don't want to visit it. It's just too much for us to handle emotionally sometimes. But we also forget that God would be there to handle it for us, to help us process that information or that struggle. We just really forget the power of God sometimes. I think that's really the root of it.
There is an ancient philosopher saying that an unexamined life is not worth living. Yeah.
That's very true.
But we are frightened of examining our own lives. Probably on one hand, we are frightened of what we may find
out.
Yeah. And ironically, on the other side, we don't want to change.
Right.
We know we are wrong, we know we are failed, but still don't want to change. We cling to those petty things and don't ask me to change. No. So we rather keep everyone at a distance, keep God at bay, don't come too close, don't come too close. So examining yourself and doing that in the light of God's love and acceptance is, as I understand, is a core part of your inner life.
Yes, I think it's essential. I feel like discipline is a word that God is seriously trying to redeem. The word discipline in the Bible is in the same sentence as love. And in this age, a lot of times, discipline and love are separated a lot.
Very much so,
where there's not a lot of love experienced in discipline and or correction or needing to be correct. We dissociate those words a lot. And so being able to have a view of, I'm going to receive this discipline, but I know that God still loves me. Or the discipline that needs to be given to someone needs to be one that is coupled with love. It really redeems that experience. And so when you know that the discipline you're receiving or the correction you're receiving is coming from a point of love, or God is trying to mold you in a way so that you are tried by the fire and coming out as gold, you look forward, you go forward, because you know that that experience is going to be enveloped in his love, and that you'll come out stronger and wiser and able to bless more people because of it.
You see that happening with you yourself?
Yes. I'm able to, I guess, appreciate it more. It's still hard. It's having hard conversations about yourself or your involvement in an issue.
By the way, do you also have like a friend, a very close friend, speaking about that, or is just you and God, or sometimes you also try to, let's say, mirror yourself in the life and experience or understanding of another Christian friend?
If I'm understanding, I guess, your question correctly, yes. I mean, sometimes it's just me and God and prayer, but, you know, it always helps to talk with other people and have that iron on iron kind of experience, so that you can help them more, they can help you, and finding mentors as well. I think generational support is important, and there are people that are older than me that have been through more, that spiritually support my efforts to stay close to God, to spend time in prayer and do those necessary reflective things to grow me spiritually. So yes, I think sometimes one-on-one with God and also with other people is definitely a blessing.
Christians tend to be very individualistic in our days. In a way, it's true that it's me and God, but at the same time, we lose a lot if we hide ourselves from others, and we are anyways prone to deceiving ourselves.
Always.
Yeah. So when we make this bold step to reveal something about ourselves to others, that can be both humiliating and also liberating.
Yes.
But also empowering.
Empowering for sure. Yeah. I mean, Acts is that, the upper room experience of confessing your sins and praying for one another. As scary as that was for all of them, being known as the followers of Christ and their position, men, women, adults. But you see what happened, with that, how the Holy Spirit came down, and that's where the beginning of the church happened. There's promise there, even as fearful as it is.
So you mentioned that at one time you went back to school?
Yes, I did.
Recently, or?
About 4 years ago.
Where was that?
It was at Georgia Southern University, near Savannah in Statesboro, Georgia.
It was a good experience for you.
It was very good. I kind of branched out from just my own friends because my friends were in Atlanta. So it was me just kind of growing my own roots there. And God put together an opportunity where I could work part-time in an apartment complex in exchange for a townhome. So I had a very nice home to live in. It didn't take away from my studies or anything like that. And I could host Bible studies there every Friday night. And so there were quite a few Adventist students on campus. And every night, God blessed me with enough money to make a dinner for them. And they would come because college students love to eat. But it created a community where we could spend time in prayer together, eat, catch up, and it followed into them going to church more, where because people they connected with at the Bible study were there, they all wanted to go to church, Sabbath school. We would have packed youth Sabbaths. There wasn't this idea of not being able to find young people. There were a lot of young people involved. And it was just a great, rich, encouraging experience. Are you
still in contact with some of them?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Yes, I'm actually going to be in one of their weddings at the end of the year. So, yeah, I mean, in contact with quite a few of them. They're still in church, doing well.
And returning to your current work, you are still working with students with special needs?
That's correct, yes.
In a class setting or
class setting.
Do you also continue on one-to-one?
Yes, mentoring as well.
Both?
Both.
As we come closer to the end,
yes.
Believe it or not, of our conversation, could you share one or two situations or stories?
Yes. My favorite experience that I'm going through right now is with a young person who upbringing has just been very, very rough for them. Academically, emotionally, I just feel like there were just experiences that created emotional trauma for this person, and they have just not been able to function well in a school setting. They're known throughout the district as just being a failure. And teachers have tried with this student, have made efforts, and they just couldn't get past his, behavioral issues. And being introduced to him 2.5 years ago has been a very interesting but deep learning experience for me as to how God redeems us to himself. And I've learned so much about the importance of understanding Christ's righteousness, because I've been able to communicate that to this young person in a way that creates a culture that he can gravitate towards. He doesn't put up behavioral walls with me. I'm able to talk to him about the struggles that he goes through. And he came in as a freshman. He had to repeat 9th grade, but praise God, he's a senior now.
Really?
Yeah, and doing well. He has some opportunities to go to college and better his life. But just seeing him grow and seeing how the principles that we learn in church and the things that God tells us to value in our lives and our Christian walk, I'm able to communicate those, just been in conversation with him, just in letting him know that whether he's struggling or doing exceptionally well at something, that God's love is still accessible to him, has been empowering for him and his family.
And his family.
Yes,
The
yes.
family observed
They do.
the transformation, and they also recognized the source of that new power,
Yes.
redemption.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting because when I first met him, he was a very just absorbed person in himself, very protective of him and all about him. But you see this concern for others starting to grow in his life, where the selfless love that's being put into him, his fountain is starting to be filled, and he's starting to care about others and have concern for other people as well.
He began caring for others.
Yes, community service and being a good teammate, supporting people when they're going through things, and these are things that he would never do. And just seeing his transformation has been very, very encouraging, to just watch how a seed can grow into a tree that blesses other people. Yeah.
And it all started in a math class.
In a math class.
The most unexpected, inconspicuous place for such a spiritual transformation.
Right. It's a very interesting way of putting it, but it's very true. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bridgette, for coming and for sharing your personal walk with God and the way God helped you to understand him and to understand yourself and to understand others. And knowing better how he redeems you helped you to help him redeem others.
Right.
And so the circle is widening and widening.
Yes,
and
it is.
May God continue to inspire you, to keep your big smiles and be a source of hope and confidence and love for many, many others.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blessing.